Imagine spending ages building your family tree, only to discover that you've been researching the wrong ancestors. It happens more often than you think. And the culprit? Sources. Or rather, how we use them. You've probably heard the advice 1,000 times. Make sure you have sources. But what if blindly following that advice is actually leading you astray? You could be making your research a lot harder, missing key relatives, or even adding the wrong people to your family tree. In this video, I'll reveal the hidden dangers of just having sources and show you the right way to use them to truly uncover your real family history. But what is a source anyway? Is it a census, a death certificate, a marriage record, that napkin that Aunt Betty wrote on back in 1987? What about an online family tree? Actually, any of those could be a source. Because a source is whatever you use to get a piece of information. And that's what gets people in trouble. If you look at these and just see sources, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everything in your family tree is accurate because, well, it has sources. It can also make you think that you don't need to go find better sources because, hey, I already have a source. But the truth is, sources are not created equally. Just because Aunt Betty says that she was born in 1930 doesn't mean that that's right. And just because the census says that your ancestor was born in Pennsylvania, it doesn't mean that he was. Just having a source doesn't necessarily mean having the truth. So, how do you know how accurate a source is? Well, there are 3 things to look at, and each one of them can make a difference on how much weight you put on that source. Have you ever played the game Telephone, where there's a group of people and you whisper a message to the person next to you? And the goal of the game was to see how accurately, or not, that whispered message makes it all the way around. Well, way back in the day when I was in Girl Scouts, I played this game with a group of about 30 scouts and scout leaders. Now, the message started out as, "My mother went to the store," and ended up as, "The chicken was on the train." It's the same with sources. What we see usually isn't the first message in that telephone chain. It's been whispered, copied, indexed, retyped, scanned, abstracted, put online. Every time that something changes format or it's indexed or abstracted, it's a new chance for an error to creep in, whether it's a typo, information getting dropped, or sometimes even erroneous information being added. If you're basing your conclusions on those errors, well, what you're putting into your family tree is going to be getting further and further away from what your tree actually is. You can really help out your research by working your way back to the original record. That can include things like clicking on the image when it's available. Of course, sometimes the image isn't available, but it's a good idea to track down the record that's being referenced. In this case, an obituary in the Denver Post from July 27, 1913. Even if that record was indexed perfectly, that doesn't mean that the information is right. And that brings us to the second thing that we need to watch out for. If you'd ask me what I had for dinner last Wednesday, I'd say pork chops, and you would probably believe me. But there are some possibilities here. What if I misspoke and I actually had pulled pork? Or maybe I didn't want you to know that my dinner was a great big chocolate cupcake. What? Memory can be flawed. And humans sometimes make mistakes when they say something. And sometimes they outright lie. Now, accuracy isn't really a big deal when we're talking about food, but it is a big deal when we're talking about records. Take the census. Except for 1940, we usually don't know who gave that information. It could have been the head of household, the wife, one of the kids, the neighbor next door. Did they actually know what they were talking about? And if you don't know who gave the information on a source, you really can't judge how accurate that source is. Even when we do know the informant, we need to think about what they would have known. Stanley Bream died in 1914, and his death certificate lists both of his parents. Awesome! But the informant isn't a family member. It was the doctor. Now, did Dr. Shaw know Stanley and his parents? Did Dr. Shaw know what he was talking about? That brings us to the third thing to be careful of when judging a source. Now, this really isn't about the source, it's really more about you and what you're doing with those sources. We're human and we tend to want answers yesterday. But that rush can actually really get us into trouble. And we can start reading things in records that aren't really there. Take this 1860 census. Adam and Eleanor Baer are living in Fairfield County, Ohio. Their household consists of young adults and children ranging in age from 29 down to Isabella, age 6, and Jesse, age 5. Now, I've seen several family trees that list Isabella and Jesse as the children of Adam and Eleanor, based solely on this one 1860 census record. But here's the problem. The 1860 census doesn't list relationships. Without more research, adding them as children, that really is just a theory or a guess. But when we dig deeper, we find an apprenticeship record in Fairfield County in 1857 that bound Isabel and Jesse, quote, reputed to be the children of Jacob Baer, to the care of Adam Baer. Ancestry.com has loads of record collections to help you with your genealogy, but there's a trick to understanding exactly what is in those collections. Check out this video to see how you can figure out what Ancestry really has so that you can find more of your ancestors. Ooh, sprinkles.